Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Jordyn and welcome to today's video, which is another book of the month reading vlog, one of my favorite series of videos that I do on my channel. And this one is very needed because I have got 6 book of the month books sitting on my shelf, well, right now on my table, staring at me, wanting me to read them, and I'm so excited about all of them. Really quickly, if you're not familiar with Book of the Month, it is a book subscription service, which I am a regular paying member of. Actually, I often get gift cards to Book of the Month from my family members for like Christmas and my birthday, but I just mean that to say I'm not sponsored by Book of the Month. I just am a member and I enjoy the service, and I like to do reading vlogs like these to get reviews out for some of their more recent picks, to help you decide if you are also a member, whether you want to add these books onto your future boxes. If you've already picked them, help you decide whether or not to pick them up right away. Or if you're not a Book of the Month member, this can still help inform you as to whether you want to pick these books up on your own. So with that, let's go ahead and get right into the books that I will be reading in this video. Okay, I have to start with my most anticipated book out of this whole entire stack. This is a book I have seen nothing but rave reviews for. Starting late last year, I saw some ARC reviews, and now that the book is out, I'm just seeing people love this book. And it's The Favorite by Lane Fargo. This author I know has written mystery thrillers in the past. I have not read any of her books, but I've seen generally good reviews. This one, though, is not a mystery thriller as far as I understand. I think this is a contemporary romance between 2 figure skaters. I love books that follow people who are super passionate about anything, but especially sports and just following athletes. I do find that to be intriguing as a premise, and generally I enjoy that. Plus, again, all of the good reviews just have me so excited to read this book. So I will be starting with this one, and I really hope I love it as much as everyone else I'm seeing love it. Okay, the next book is gonna feel a little bit out of place within this video because it's a Christmas book, but here's the thing, I don't want to hang on to this book until next Christmas. I just don't want it to hang out on my shelves for that long, and I saw so many good reviews for this book that I do want to give it a try. So I guess I'm just gonna go ahead and extend my Christmas spirit through the first quarter of this year, but it's The Most Wonderful Crime of the Year by Ali Carter. As far as I understand, I think this is like a mystery / romance book. I'm not sure if it's a cozy mystery or what really the vibe is. I've just seen some really unexpected good reviews for this book, so I figured I would give it a try to just, you know, be in the know. It is short, so it's not going to be that much of a time investment, and I want to hear what the hype is about. Another one that is a little bit out on a limb for me personally and my reading tastes is A Sea of Unspoken Things by Adrienne Young. This author in the past has written fantasy books. I think she writes kind of more literary, like light fantasy, maybe more magical realism rather than super high fantasy. So I think I have a chance of enjoying her books. And this one sounded interesting because it says it's about a woman who investigates her twin brother's mysterious death while confronting the ghosts of her own haunted past. So I really don't know how actually paranormal like that hauntingness is, or if it's more sort of metaphorical and just vibes, but I'm gonna give it a try. I've heard really great things about this author and her books and her writing, so I'm gonna give it a try. And again, this is a pretty short one, so we will see how that ends up for me. All right, this is, I think, the last book that I picked in December, and it's much more up my alley. It is Alice Feeney's Beautiful Ugly. This is an adult mystery thriller. I have read a number of Alice Feeney's books in the past. I've generally enjoyed a couple of them. A couple have been more misses. I've seen this book get overall mixed reviews, but some people had this book on their favorites list out of all of 2024, which is shocking and interesting and sort of uncommon for a more domestic type mystery thriller. So I'm excited to see what is in here and hoping I enjoy it as much as I've seen other people enjoy it. That is obviously the theme of these books today. Okay, and then 2 books that I picked in February. So these are the most recent books on this TBR. The first is Good Dirt by Charmaine Wilkerson. This, I believe, is a historical fiction book, or maybe contemporary. Not sure, I'll have to let you know once I read it, but this is the author of Black Cake, which was a historical fiction book about family. and I really enjoyed that one. So I'm just giving this author another chance to hopefully enjoy another one of her books. Haven't seen much for reviews or thoughts or anything on this one yet. And then last but not least, a very anticipated book that I also have not seen much for reviews about yet, but I know a lot of people were very excited about this book coming out. It is a contemporary romance book called First Time Caller by B.K. Borison. This is the author of the Lovelight Farms series, which I haven't read, but I've seen a lot of romance readers love. And this book has something to do with like a radio show, which sounds fun. We'll see if it works for me. Hoping there's something a little bit deeper and more emotional about it, but I don't know. I guess I'll let you know. So with that, I am just going to go right ahead, dive right into reading these books. I'll be back once I have finished each one, assuming I finish all of them. And at that time, I'll give you a little bit of a better synopsis in my own words about each of these books. And then of course, let you know my thoughts, my review, and whether I would recommend them. So it's gonna be a fun time. I'll be back once I have finished my first book. Okay, my friends, I am here with some great news. I have finished 2 books for this video, so I've got a little double update for you. And I'm so excited to talk about both books, to be honest. The first one is the book that I absolutely had to start with in this video. Its reputation precedes it at this point. I had such high hopes and expectations, and I could not wait to form my own opinion on it. It is The Favorite by Lane Fargo. This is a book that I would classify it as a contemporary book. There's a little bit of a romance or a love story within it. It's about 2 figure skaters or ice dancers. You learn a little bit about the different types of figure skating and ice dancing. I still don't really know the differences, but 2 skaters, 2 athletes, and we follow them from when they are children through their adulthood, through their personal matters and also their skating career. And it's just this sweeping story, very grand because of course it follows them through their whole life. It's very dramatic. They go through so much personally, professionally with their athletics, pursuing the Olympics, and their relationships and dynamics with other skaters and coaches. It just feels like a very grand tale. And I've heard this book compared to Taylor Jenkins Reid, and I completely agree, but I know that Taylor Jenkins Reid actually has written a lot of different types of books, so I specifically think this is for fans of Carrie Soto is Back. I think that has to be the closest comparison to this book because that also follows an elite athlete who's kind of willing to do whatever she has to do to get to the top. That is very much these characters in this book as well. So while I would say if you enjoy Taylor Jenkins Reid's other books, I do think the tone feels kind of similarly, but when it comes to the plot and the characters, definitely Carrie Soto is where it's at. And I really enjoyed that book and I just loved this book. And as I was reading this one, I was constantly like checking myself and asking myself, okay, is this the hype getting to you or are you actually enjoying this book? And I know that I was because every time I had to stop listening to this book, I primarily listened to the audio. I was thinking about this book and I was wanting to get back to reading it. I was just addicted to this story and completely addicted to these characters. And I think that's the best thing I can say about this book is that it's just addicting. These characters are kind of ruthless. I mean, they're in a very difficult sport. There's a lot of elitism and exclusion involved in the figure skating, ice dancing world. So if you want to get to the top, you gotta be kind of ruthless about it. And there's just a lot of like politicking and working your relationships. And then there's the drama of the relationship between these 2 main characters because they've known each other since children. They have so much history and love for each other, but they're also professional partners and they're also athletic partners. So it gets complicated and then other people get involved. It's just a lot of drama between the 2 of them. And I think that's another thing that people should know before getting into this book, that these are not the most likable characters. They go through a lot of drama. I've seen this book also compared to Magnolia Parks, which I have not read, but I've heard that that is just very drama filled and you either like reading about the drama or you don't. So if you do, and you're okay with a book that follows athletes and you want to hear about the details of like their training and their competitions and the nitty gritty of the skating itself, then I think you'll love this book. I hope that's true. I hope you love it as much as I did. I just know that this is going to be a very buzzy book for, I assume, the rest of the year. It totally lived up to the expectations in my mind, and I don't really want to add to the hype that I've seen it getting because I don't want people to go into it and be let down, which inevitably happens when there's a book with this much hype and so many great reviews. So like, if that's gonna freak you out, just calm it down a little. But for me, I loved every second of reading this book. I loved the audiobook version of this. It's got a full cast of narrators, and not only do they sound different with their voices, but they were just so animated. And the fact that this book is so drama-filled, you could hear in the narrators' voices that they were just playing up that drama. Like the gossipers were sounding gossipy. The characters who are holding grudges, you can tell they're just a little bit snooty. The longing of the main characters when they're talking about like loving each other and things like that, and the pain when they go through hard experiences. Just the range of these narrators made the book that much better to listen to. So I highly do recommend the audiobook of this book. So this was definitely 5 stars for me. I'm so happy it lived up to the hype. I expected to love the book, and I'm so glad that I did. But the second book I have to talk about, I honestly didn't know if I was going to enjoy it. I had some reserved expectations, I guess, but I decided to shift gears and go into the mystery thriller Beautiful Ugly. And I was so pleasantly surprised by this book. One thing that I am doing with my personal reading right now is taking a little bit of a break from mystery thrillers and only picking up the ones that either have a really intriguing synopsis, or I'm seeing really good reviews for, or are by authors that are tried and true for me. And this one has a few of those things. I have seen some really great reviews for this book. I know, for example, it was on Jan's favorite list from Jan Agaton, which was sort of surprising as a sort of domestic thriller that it would end up so high on her favorites list. So that sparked my interest. Also, Alice Feeney, I have generally really enjoyed in the past. My favorite from her is probably Rock, Paper, Scissors. I'd have to go back and look at all my ratings to confirm that, but I did really enjoy that one. I really enjoy Alice Feeney's writing style, so I was hoping I would have a similar experience here, but I didn't know for sure. And it was such a pleasant surprise. Again, I feel like the break that I've been taking from mystery thrillers is allowing for them to become novel to me again. And I can actually be excited and surprised by twists and turns because I don't feel like I'm reading them in every single book. So I do think that the reason I enjoyed this so much is because of that. I took a break from thrillers. I got to come back and just let myself have fun with one. I really enjoy Alice Feeney's writing, and I continued to like it in here. She has a way of like inserting just some really poignant thoughts that are a little bit quippy. They're a little bit cliche, but sometimes turn those cliches on their head in just a way that works for me, that just makes me constantly be like, that was a great line. For example, I wrote one down. There were a few that happened before this quote that I wish I wrote down, but I was also listening to the audiobook of this book. But one that I did take time to write down is one of the sentences. One of the quotes by the main character in here is, "Why do some men always think they are right despite having so much previous experience of being wrong?" I love a line like that. That's just like so true. Men are just the worst. I'm just kidding. Hashtag not all men. But anyway, and then the third thing that I enjoyed about this book is I just feel like it was a very solid story. It's a very intriguing premise, which I haven't even told you about yet. But it follows this man. The first chapter is him on the phone with his wife. He's an author, and he's so excited to tell his wife that his most recent book has been named a New York Times bestseller. So he's so happy. He's on the phone telling her. She is in her car driving when all of a sudden she comes upon this woman in the middle of the road. She stops her car. She's still on the phone, and she tells her husband, "Hey, there's this woman in the middle of the road. I'm gonna get out of my car and see if she needs some help." And her husband is like, no, don't do that. But she's like, no, I'm gonna do that. So she gets out to go help this woman that she saw and disappears. Her husband never hears from her again. She never returns to her car or anything, and she goes missing. And then this book really kicks off 1 year later as the male main character is trying to move on with his life. He's trying to get back into writing because, like I mentioned, he's an author, but his wife has been missing for a year and he has no more answers about where she went or what happened to her. And so his agent ends up offering him a place to stay, basically this remote like house in Scotland. where he can basically escape from his life, use it as a writing retreat, and try to get back into his writing flow. So that's the setup of this book. It's really not that long of a book, and looking at how long it is or how short it is, I'm actually surprised by how much was packed in here. But I also think that helped a lot, just keeping the pace quick of this book and the intrigue of that overall premise and just wanting to figure out like what happened to his wife. It just was intriguing enough to get me to keep flipping the pages. I was ultimately really satisfied with how this book ended up. I don't think I was mind blown by anything, and admittedly, it's hard to blow my mind at this point because I have read so many thrillers in the past, but I am satisfied by the conclusion and what this author was trying to do with this story. And also, she just continues having just really unique things about her writing. There's a fun little, I don't know, hidden message that is revealed towards the end of this book, which I enjoyed. Jan also mentioned that in her review of this book, and I'm glad I kind of had my mind out for that. And something that I didn't notice as I was reading this book, probably mostly because I was listening to the audiobook, but each of the chapters has a chapter title, and they are all oxymorons. Obviously, the title of this book is an oxymoron, Beautiful Ugly, but each of the chapter titles are also oxymorons, like Living Dead, Impossible Solution, Close Distance, Man-Child, Growing Smaller, Found Missing, Dull Roar. Like, I could just read through these all day long. I won't, so that you can read it yourself. Also, hilariously, the first one is Happily Married. That's so funny, knowing that they're all supposed to be oxymorons, but then Happily Married is the first one. I just love Alice Feeney's little subtle humor. So all of that made me enjoy this book so much. I'm giving it 4 stars. I don't know at this point what it would take for a thriller to be 5 stars for me. I just don't really get that 5-star feeling from them anymore, but this is about as close as it gets. This was really solid in my opinion. Well worth a read if you have enjoyed other Alice Feeney books in the past. I feel like this lives up to kind of the expectations that you might have of her books. If you know you don't enjoy her writing, because I do know there are some people who haven't gelled with it in the past, then probably you can skip this one because I don't think it's different enough to change your mind on that. But if you have enjoyed her previous books, then I think you will also be satisfied by reading this one. Even if you're like me and you've been burnt out on mystery thrillers lately, I do think this one is still worth a read. And if you haven't read Alice Feeney before, I think this is a great place to start. Again, it's not too long, so it's not that much of a time commitment. And I'm just really glad that I read it. I'm glad that I picked it from Book of the Month, and I'm glad that I enjoyed it. So with that, I'm gonna get on to continuing to read. Not sure which book will be next, but I'll be back once I finish the next book and can give you my next update. All right, friends, I have another double update for you because I have finished 2 more of the books for this video. I think this will actually work out nicely to kind of pair them together for my reviews to help make this video not quite so long for being 6 books. So let's talk about The Most Wonderful Crime of the Year by Ali Carter. This is a book that I saw really become popular late last year. I think it was released in December, which would make sense for being a Christmas themed book. And the genre of this one is interesting because it's basically like a perfect 50-50 split between a mystery and a romance, which is not really a pair of genres that goes very well together or that often gets put together. Yes, there is kind of romantic suspense as a subgenre, but I wouldn't say that this book is all that suspenseful. It's much more of a almost cozy feeling. Well, I guess some cozy mysteries do also have romances, but this is a like locked room sort of murder mystery type deal that also is a romance between the 2 main characters. And we do get not exactly always alternating like 1 for 1, but we do get both of their perspectives throughout this book. And the 2 main characters are both authors, and they publish books with the same publishing company, and apparently they both have really bad luck around Christmas time. So both of these authors get invited to this mysterious location over Christmas, and they both accept because they have nothing better to do. And it turns out that they've been invited to this manor, basically, that belongs to this older woman who is an author that our female main character is absolutely obsessed with. She's described very much as like an Agatha Christie type author who has a ton of mystery books that she has published, and our main character has a really strong connection with her. She really, really admires her and has been involved in her career. So they both get invited to this mansion place, and they are there with a cast of other characters. Some of them are family members of this older woman. Some of them are other acquaintances who were just invited for Christmas for other reasons. And they're just there, they think, to enjoy their time when all of a sudden the older woman goes missing. So the mystery portion of this book is finding out what happened to that older woman who is like this famous mystery author. And then the other half is a romance between the main characters. And okay, this book got a lot of really good reviews because people really liked the banter between these two characters. There's a lot of humor within this book, and they thought it was pretty adorable, basically getting to see a romance develop as these characters are solving this mystery together. And I see why other people enjoy this book so much. It just didn't quite work for me. I did really enjoy the mystery portion of it, and I definitely preferred the mystery compared to the romance, because the romance, something about the banter between these characters, it just didn't perfectly match my personal sense of humor. So I just felt a little bit weird about the parts that I guess I was supposed to think were cute and funny. Also, the male main character calls the female main character sweetheart so many times. That already is a little bit of a cringy pet name to me, but also the number of times he calls her sweetheart in here is just awkward, especially because these two main characters have kind of an enemies to lovers type of situation going on. They're kind of rivals, and they also have had just a number of like run-ins together that are just awkward. And so like the quick flip from their relationship prior to this trip to professing their love and him calling her sweetheart every 5 seconds, it just, I don't know, it didn't work for me. It came off as cringy. So I'm landing at 3 stars for this book because I just feel that very conflicting kind of feeling between the mystery portion and the romance portion. Again, I can see why other people enjoyed this more. I just didn't. I will say that I was a little worried about reading this book in February because it is set during Christmas time and the cover gives off strong Christmas vibes. But I will say I didn't really have to worry about that because I think this book feels much more wintry than specifically Christmassy. There really aren't that many Christmas specific festivities that go on. There are a couple of like holiday corporate parties mentioned, but in terms of the present day when they're trapped at this manor, it's much more wintry locked room mystery than it is Christmas. So if you are considering reading this book and you want to squeeze it in before winter ends, I do think that's a good decision. You don't necessarily have to save this for specifically Christmas. But yeah, 3 stars. I'm not really sure if I'll pick up this author again. I think if she publishes another book that is getting similar amount of hype, I will have to take a look at the plot, the synopsis itself, and see if it's something I'm interested in. I think if she starts to lean one direction or the other in terms of going more mystery thriller, then I would be interested. If she sticks with the mystery romance or starts going more into romance, I don't think they will be for me. The other book that I read that also unfortunately is not for me is A Sea of Unspoken Things by Adrienne Young. This was a little bit of a wild card. I didn't really know what I was getting myself into because I haven't read this author before. I know that other people have really liked her previous books, but the way they talk about them make me feel like they're maybe a little bit too fantasy for me, maybe a little bit too like whimsical feeling. And this book I didn't enjoy, but it's not really for those reasons. It's mostly that I was just really bored reading this book. This follows the story of this woman who is going back to her hometown to basically settle some affairs, take care of things she needs to take care of after her twin brother has been killed. He was like a nature wilderness photographer and he had an accident when he was accidentally shot in like the woods or this, you know, naturey spot by some hunters in the area. And the main character is going back not only to settle those affairs after his death, but also she has this niggling feeling that maybe this whole situation isn't exactly what it seems. So she's trying to figure out what exactly happened to her twin brother. And I feel like this book wants to lean really heavily on the twin connection that this main character has with her twin brother, or had when he was alive. And I think that connection is supposed to be depicted as so strong that it's borderline magical, and you're kind of wondering, is this just like a normal twin connection, or is this something supernatural between these specific characters? And frankly, I didn't really care to find out any more about that. And also just the things that this main character is doing were just boring. I felt like we were moving so slowly towards the conclusion of the book, and also she just made decisions and had conversations that just had me confused. They were not at all how I would act in this situation. And it was very just meandering, and like, if you're trying to get to the bottom of something, just ask. Or if you're having a conversation with somebody for some reason, just ask them what you want to ask them. She was very beating around the bush. It just really annoyed me. So I'm glad that this book was as short as it was. It felt quite a bit longer in my opinion because I wasn't enjoying it. But yeah, I'm landing at 2 stars for this book, and I'll be curious to see more reviews come out from other people who read this book, especially people who have also read her previous books. She wrote Spells for Forgetting and The Unmaking of June Farrow. Oh, and the Fable series. So yeah, she's got a number of books that people have loved. And again, I'll be interested to see if people who loved those books also enjoy this one, or if this is kind of, I don't know, an unforeseen dud. Because if that's the case, then maybe I still have hope of reading and enjoying her other books. Specifically, the one that I would be interested in is The Unmaking of June Farrow. That has been pitched and recommended to me specifically. But if it's similar to this one and similarly enjoyed as this one, then I don't think I have a good chance of enjoying it. So I don't know. I need to see other people's reviews of this book and then use that to determine whether this author's other books might be for me. So if you have any input about that, please let me know, especially if you have read this most recent book, or if what I'm saying about it seems to ring true for her other books, or if they're pretty different. But yeah, a little bit of a bummer to have a 2-star book. We are not trending in a great direction, going from a 5-star book to 4 stars to 3 stars to 2 stars. So here's to hoping that the last 2 books for this video turn it around. But I will probably be back once I have just gone ahead and finished the last 2 books so that I can wrap them up at the same time, wrap up this video, and get these recommendations out. So I'll be back once I am fully finished. All right, my friends, time for the final update since I've finished both of the last 2 books for this video. Let's start with Good Dirt, which I read, obviously. This is by Charmaine Wilkerson, who is the author of Black Cake, which was a historical fiction, kind of family-centered novel that I really enjoyed. This one feels very similar in a lot of ways, but it's also different, which makes sense. It's a different book. This tells the story of a family. And in the present day, the main character of this family is Ebby. When she was 10 years old, she had an older brother who was killed in their home. So that obviously really affected her, lots of trauma. And this book is definitely about how this family has grieved the loss of that son, but also in the event, while he was killed, or right before he was killed, what also happened is this jar was smashed that had been in their family for generations. And so that jar in this book, it kind of becomes like a through line element, because we also get perspectives in this book from 1 and 2, I think only 2 generations before, maybe 1 more, but basically about those family members, and then how this jar has been such an important item for this family. And it goes back to when the jar was created, who it was created by, and has kind of this whole subplot and piece of information about stoneware that was created by enslaved people. It's kind of equally about the people in this family as it is about this jar, the creation of this jar, and that whole side of it, which I found really interesting. And I've never read a book that has something like this at the forefront, at least that I can remember. And I really, really enjoyed the amount of learning that I did in this book. That's often a reason that I enjoy historical fiction so much, is because so often it covers something, whether it's something in history or even something present day, that is a topic that I just don't know much about. And I love that historical fiction brings to light that history and that passion for whatever it is, within characters, within families, whatever. So I love when that learning is paired with empathy and learning about characters and just getting to know people and what they're passionate about, what makes them who they are. It just really richens, you know, a story, and it richens real life because a lot of times it's factual or it's based on true things. And so I enjoyed that. Let's see, I have been known to struggle with multi-generational stories. It's one of those things that is so popular in books and I want to love them so much. I keep picking up books that I know are multi-generational family stories and I never end up loving them. Unfortunately, that is also kind of the case here because I didn't love this book. There were many parts of this book that I was bored by, and it was more so the very slow character-driven parts, especially in kind of the intermediate family generations as well as even the present day. I wasn't as captured by Abby as a character as I was by even the farthest back generation, again, when we were talking about that stoneware and enslavement part of the book. So that is unfortunate that I had moments of boredom because I want to say that I loved this book and I think I liked the idea of it more than I enjoyed my time actually reading it, which is okay. And hopefully I can still talk about it in a way that will get it to its intended audience because I know it exists. I know that there are people who love multi-generational stories. And if that's you, I think this one is well worth a read. It's about as good of that type of story that I've read and I've personally enjoyed. Unfortunately for me, that only makes it land at like a 3-star rating. But again, there were things that I really did like and appreciate about this book. And in general, I am a fan of Charmaine Wilkerson and I will continue, I'm sure, picking up her books in the future. Hopefully they'll have characters and plot lines that I can enjoy even more. But, you know, I'm just now thinking about how Black Cake had the literal cake as an emphasis in the story, and this book has this jar that is such a focal point. That's something very unique about this author, again, that I do enjoy. So I'm excited to see her continue writing in the future, to see what other, you know, objects she can have families really care about and see how she ties that into a story. And hopefully I can find an absolute winner for me, a 5-star book. But for now, I am satisfied with reading this one. I'm glad I read it. It wasn't a new favorite, but I do think it was worth a read and worth a recommendation. So that's where I'm gonna leave that one. And then last but not least, the final book that I finished for this vlog is A First Time Caller. This is getting a lot of hype right now, though admittedly I haven't seen a ton of reviews for it, so I'm not sure if people are loving it as much as it's been hyped. Let me take a quick look. All right, 29,000 ratings and a 4.20 average rating, so that's pretty good. So it does look like a lot of people are loving this book. And I wish I could say that I loved it too. On paper, there are a lot of things that I enjoy about the idea of this book, mainly with the female main character, because this woman, her name is Lily. No, it's not. Her name is Lucy. And she is a mom. She's the mom to a teenager. I think she's like 13 or 14 years old. So right off the bat, I do love romances that feature characters with children. And Lucy is also an auto mechanic, which is something I loved reading about in this book. Definitely not a profession that you often see female main characters have. And Lucy is, I can't remember if she's divorced or if she never married the father to her child, but she still has a really great relationship with that man. And I really loved seeing that interesting kind of family dynamic between Lucy, her daughter's father, and his now husband, and how they ended up moving into houses right next to each other. So they have a really nice kind of unique, unconventional but loving family situation that is great to see. And this book kicks off, and it is a romance. It kicks off when Lucy's daughter calls into a radio station, to this like romance radio show, to try and talk to that host about advice to how she can get her mom to fall in love or to find love. And that's one of the very first scenes in this book, and Lucy walks in on her daughter having this phone conversation, and it's hilarious because there's this big misunderstanding because Lucy thinks her daughter is talking to a boy at midnight or 10 p.m. or whatever it is, late at night. That was a really funny scene. And all of that to say that ultimately this is a romance between Lucy and that radio host. But they go through this big situation where the radio host starts a show to try and find Lucy love on the air. So it's kind of like a bachelor dating type of trope thing. And as I'm talking about it, and the idea of all of that, I really enjoy. The only thing that doesn't really connect to me out of all of that is the radio show portion. I think a lot of people are likening this book to books that have like podcast elements to them. For some reason, that just is never and has never been something that super interests me. So I didn't find that part super interesting, but the rest of it I really like on paper. And I enjoyed reading this, but there just was nothing that sent it over the edge for me. I love emotion in my romance books, and I don't feel like this book went anywhere emotional. And maybe that is because Lucy and her daughter are in such a stable, loving situation already. They don't have a lot of emotional stuff that they're working through, and that's great. Like for real life, that's ideal, obviously. But for some reason in books, it just doesn't hit me as hard as when there is some kind of, I don't know, trauma to overcome or something emotional to work through within a romance. I don't know. This didn't have that, so I didn't fall in love with it, and that is maybe a me problem more than a book problem. So I'm giving it 3 stars. I feel like I'm not going to remember a ton about this book into the future, especially when it comes to the romance itself and the relationship itself. It didn't feel all that special. And honestly, the guy I don't remember anything about other than that she says he does not have a face for radio. So I guess that's the main reason that she likes him, is because he's attractive. I don't know. I just didn't feel much for him as a character or their romance together. So it's getting 3 stars from me. So with that is it for this video. A kind of quick hitter of a reading vlog. 6 books down. Did have a major success and a 5-star book, which I am so excited about. Then I guess we kind of had a roller coaster from there with a 4-star, a 3-star, a 2-star, and 2 more 3 stars. Let me know if you have also read any of the books that I read in this video, and if you did, what your thoughts were. If you haven't read any of them, let me know if I convinced you to pick any of them up or potentially stay away from any of them. Let me know if you're excited for Book of the Month vlogs to continue throughout this year. And other than that, I don't think I have anything else. So thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in my next one.